Welcome back into the channel, folks. I'm so glad you're here because we are just about to sit down to yet another astrology chit-chat. Because we have some very significant transits happening here in the month of May that I would love to discuss and disseminate for you. And I also kind of realized that my filming schedule has gotten a little bit out of hand and I'm starting to fall behind, and thus to keep the channel and the content relevant to the astrology, we kind of need to start hurrying up with the production of content. So, without further ado, in true mercurial fashion, who happens to be one of the topics of today's video, we are skipping the frivolities, we are skipping the tangents, sort of, and we are jumping straight to the meat and potatoes of this video, the content that you actually came here for. But before we do that, as always, just in case you're new here and we haven't been formally introduced, hey there, I'm Howie, and I am a professional reader of tarot cards and astrology by trade. I am a chronic non-reader of horror fiction in my spare time, and I'm a huge planning enthusiast. Because let's face it, something around here needs to help me keep all these crazy trains of thoughts running on the tracks, because creator knows I'm not so great at doing that all by myself. And as I briefly mentioned, in today's video, we are going to be discussing the topic of Mercury in the sign of Taurus. And also in mercurial fashion, this is going to be a very quick and hasty get in, get out type of situation because Mercury is only going to be staying in Taurus for all of 2 weeks. However, despite the brief stint in the house of Venus, I wanted to highlight this particular transit because there are 2 aspects that are occurring in the sign of Taurus during this time frame that I feel really deserve a little bit of the spotlight in a video like this. Now, as we always do, make sure you have your planner, your journal, your pens, your stickers, anything that you need in order to follow along with this video. And let's go ahead and reflect upon the stars together. So as I'm filming this video on May 6th of 2026, we already have Mercury absolutely flying through the sign of Taurus. He ingressed into Taurus over on May 3rd, and he's going to be staying in this sign up until about May 17th, give or take a few hours, depending on where you're at in the world. After that, he's going to enter his own domicile, a place of comfort and ease for him, the double-bodied sign of Gemini. And he's going to be crashing into a very shocking and very unexpected house guest when he gets there, but that's going to be a topic for a separate video. Let's focus on one thing at a time. Now, this whole 2-week transit is going to involve Mercury being under the beams of the sun, so a bit of a rude entry into the house of Venus, if I do say so myself. And towards the end of this period, we are going to see not just his cazimi with the sun at 24 degrees of Taurus, but also the new moon 2 days later at 26 degrees of Taurus. And these 2 seeding points, these 2 initiations back to back like this, there's something significant here. Oftentimes when I practice astrology, I read the signs, the planets, the transits, as if I'm reading a much longer story, an epic of epic proportions. This is our life story, and every page, every chapter is interconnected somehow. And so when you have aspects that occur back to back so closely like this, especially in the same sign, they often tend to correlate to one another. Because think about it, in whole sign house astrology, one house occupies the entirety of one sign. So whatever is happening in that sign, they're going to share all of those house topics because they're within the same boundaries. All right, so first things first, Mercury into Taurus. As I mentioned earlier, he gets a bit of a rude awakening the second he steps into Taurus because those last degrees of Aries into Taurus, all of that area is being overpowered and blinded by the sun. So there's this concept in astrology called being under the beams. Basically being under the beams or under the influence, under the radiance of the sun. Any planet that is within 15 degrees on either side of the sun is considered to be under his beams. And therefore, under his influence insofar as not being able to express themselves, to speak over the sun. Once those planets are within 8 degrees of the sun, same thing on either side, they are now considered combust, almost as if they're ablaze, like an effigy. They are completely charred through and through. And this type of placement is very challenging for the other planets. Here, the sun really has center stage and the upper hand. As Mercury starts to approach the sun, he is essentially going to lose visibility in the sky, lose visibility metaphorically, and as the planet of communication, almost lose his voice as well, become inaudible, barely above a whisper, as he combats this overpowering radiance from the center, the centrifuge in this sign of Taurus. With a planet that is under the beams, this planet may often experience lethargy, a slowing down of movement, an inability to express themselves and their topics to their best degree. So here we have Mercury, our planet of trade, of commerce, analytics and logic, rationale, sciences and technologies. Those topics might suffer for a brief period of time as Mercury slowly closes in on this absolutely blindingly bright presence in the sign and the house where Taurus sits in your chart. Given all the activity that has been happening in Aries over the course of April, to me this feels like all of those fast-paced, aggressive words and disagreements and disputes and contracts and commitments that we may have made in Aries. Now that we're in Taurus, it is time to fucking commit. It is time to pick one thing to focus on and roll on with it. And so any commitments are basically locked in. We're locked into these commitments and contracts that we made just a few weeks ago as Mercury was transiting Aries. Basically, the saying on the schoolyard is no take backsies. Sorry, can't do it. Furthermore, because you're in a fixed or solid earth sign like Taurus, there's kind of this idea of compression or restriction. Not so much as Saturn's compression or restriction, although Saturn does rule those last 10 degrees of Taurus, which we'll get to in just a few moments later on in this video. But Taurus is very single-minded, driven, and determined in carving and following this path. Once it gets going, it is very hard to convince Taurus to stop. And that is the thing. This is not a stop and go type of energy. It's solid. It's fixed. And so Mercury, who enjoys fluidity and fluctuation and can blend and merge in and out of boundaries and spaces, it feels more constrictive, and we need to maybe tap into new, alternative, different ways to get our point across. And I say this because Taurus is often a very sensual, aesthetic type of sign. It is embodiment. Why? Because the moon is exalted here. And what is the moon but a representation of the physical body? She reflects the sun's light, and that is us, reflections of God, of this higher power, of Source. So Taurus is a very embodied sign. Taurus is sensual and tactile. And it just makes me think, this combination, of body language. Having to rely on someone's posture, someone's demeanor, their facial expressions in order to communicate more effectively. Because perhaps our words might feel constricted or restrictive at this time. Given that we have the sun's presence and Mercury being under his beams, I'm wondering how this could translate from a metaphor like being in the presence of something so radiant, being exposed to an all-knowing presence that it renders us speechless. We're unable to capture that experience in mere words. Think of the language of music. And we talk about this metaphorically across so many different cultures. Music transcends language boundaries and language barriers. You play music, not even with, forget lyrics, forget words, just notes, chords, tunes, and tones. There's an understanding that a group of people can derive from that music without ever speaking a single word, regardless of what language they actually speak. This kind of feels like Mercury and Sun transiting Taurus, needing to rely on transcendental languages that just They don't have those fixed boundaries because our human languages are so limited right now. Mercury in Taurus also has another metaphysical correspondence to it, and that is the minor arcana card, the Five of Pentacles in the tarot system. And that is because the first 10 degrees of Taurus is ruled by Mercury. In case you're not aware, the entire zodiacal wheel is broken up into 36 smaller sections, 36 decans, 10 degrees of each sign. And a planet is assigned the ruler to that specific piece of the much larger temple of another planet. And it's not always the sign's ruler that oversees that smaller section, that decan. In Taurus's case, the order goes Mercury, Moon, and then Saturn, which corresponds to the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles. And it's curious when we look at the traditional imagery from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck of the 5 of Pentacles. You have two very destitute looking individuals. One is even hobbling along on crutches in the absolute dead of winter, at night as well, during a snowstorm. Cold, left out, feeling abandoned, hopeless even, and they come across a church. And the lights are clearly on in that church. And all of this symbolism, you can start to derive the meaning of this card. Typically, it can be a negative card because you get this sense of lack. It's a lack mentality, it's a lack of resources, loss, poverty, whatever you want to call it. There is a materiality and a support system that is required for these two people to survive the night that they are seeking, searching for, that they long for. But they have this church here. And typically, churches, religious fixtures in general, aren't really supposed to be turning away the children of God, as far as I understand religion. And so this is sanctuary. This is a support system available to them. But because it is a religious space, we kind of have to think maybe this impoverished state is temporary because we're talking about the minor arcana. Minor arcana cards often represent environmental or temporary circumstances. This card could ask us to tap into our spiritual wellness, our spiritual self. How are we emotionally and metaphysically? Sure, we are exposed to the elements, but can we check in with our spirit at this time? What support systems are available to us? Who or what can we reach out to help us through this dark night? So what does this card have to do with Mercury in Taurus? Well, similar to what I said earlier, it's that restrictiveness. Mercury, this planet of commerce, of business acumen, of learning and analyzing and editing and refining. There isn't a lot of space or ability, capacity for him to flit about and move about and make quick decisions. He's got to move a little bit slower here. He's got to become more feminine. Remember, in astrology, we're not talking about man and woman here. We're talking about passive energies versus active energies, receptive energies versus forward momentum and impulsive energies. In a sign like Taurus, it could seem like there is very little for negotiation when you're having these conversations with Mercury and Taurus. When we think of the academic side of Mercury, this could mean one of two things, actually. This could mean that we're narrowing our academic focus. We have determined a singular path, a one great goal that we want to learn about and achieve. Or on the shadow side of that, this could mean that our academic pursuits are suddenly limited. We no longer have access to certain resources or certain opportunities as we once had. So our hand is kind of forced towards a singular path. Because Taurus is a sign of embodiment, we might end up feeling more sensitive and more reactive to words. Words that are both kind or unkind. There's the potential for deep emotional feeling while Mercury is transiting Taurus right now. We often see Taurus representing resource systems, food systems, the very basic necessities that are required for humankind to exist and to thrive. Think about it. In the zodiacal year, Taurus sits at that point of spring where the sun's light is in a fixed ascension above the horizon, and all of those seeds that we've planted in Aries season are now starting to crack, take root, and all of that greenery is starting to rise up and recolor with vibrancy our mundane plane of existence. So Taurus can be related to food systems, and Mercury bringing a technological mindset to this sign, we could see some tinkering, some reevaluating, some innovation where food systems are concerned. This could also be resource related in general, whatever resources mean to you, whether that's water, food, clothing, shelter, housing, you name it. And one thing that popped up while I was planning out my script for this video too is I just want to bring our attention to next door over in Gemini. We have Venus in Gemini right now. Now, when you have planets in each other's domiciles like this, you get something called mutual reception. And this is a boon for both planets. They may be in unfamiliar spaces, especially when those spaces are ones that they're uncomfortable in. Now, that's not really what's happening here, but you still get the idea of mutual reception where they can communicate. Even though they are in aversion to one another, they are one sign away, they are still able to kind of shout positive affirmations at each other and ask questions and answer those questions. So these two planets, all through Mercury's transit in Taurus, will be supportive of one another. And because the planet of beauty and aesthetics is in the analytical sign of Gemini, where Mercury calls his home, this swap kind of feels like analog aesthetics. That's what I'm calling it. And I've noticed this trend all over YouTube, all over Discord, all over my social media, where we are very much in a culture of anti-brain rot. We are trying to fight the fact that social media has absolutely obliterated our attention spans and sometimes our wills to live. And so the idea of analog aesthetics, of memory keeping, of tactile hobbies is really on the upswing. And for those of you who want to explore more of this analog aesthetics, this might be a great time to do that while these two planets are in mutual reception. Now hear me out. Things won't remain difficult for Mercury for very long, because even though being under the beams of the sun is considered a challenging space to occupy, there is one caveat to that, and that is the conjunction with the sun, or what is known as a cazimi. This is considered a very fortuitous aspect. It is one of the better, more positive conjunctions you can experience in astrology, and that is because what is metaphorically happening when a planet conjoins the sun is that planet is joining the king at the top of the food chain, at the top of the kingdom, and sitting upon the king's throne. And so now the planet is no longer being beaten down by these overpowering radiant rays. They are the center of attention. They are center stage. They are able to exert their self-expression very clearly from the top of an apex, the top of a mountain. What happens here as well is this is often considered a point of purification. The planet moves through a combustion period where they are burnt away. Karma is burnt away. Old stories are burnt away. Old patterns and behaviors are burnt away to make room for fresh, new ideas and pursuits. Once we leave that conjunction with the sun, yes, that planet will begin to combust again, but the combustion and being under the beams post-conjunction, post-cazimi, is often considered far more easy to navigate than the initial period of being under the beams, because the planet has been rejuvenated, it's reborn, and it is reinvigorated. That's a key word there. They're reinvigorated, they're full of energy, and they're just ready to go and express themselves in our charts now. So Mercury's cazimi in Taurus is going to be happening on May 14th at 24 degrees of Taurus. And this means it's going to be happening in the decan ruled by Saturn. Now, this is a very different flavor to what we saw with Mercury entering his own decan at the start of Taurus. Whereas before, Mercury has to kind of get used to the restrictive, single-minded determination of Taurus and really settle into a path forward. Now we've reached the point in Taurus's story where we've matured. Saturn is aging. It is wisdom gathered through experience, often difficult experience, because he's the Lord of Karma. Those commitments are even more serious to us. Now we are really, truly understanding of what makes us tick, what drives us forward, what we are willing to throw our determination into. This is also going to mean that Mercury will be reborn after his cazimi as an evening star. He is more process-oriented, he is slower moving, and that really matches the energy that Saturn brings to this particular decan. Now we have the ability and the capacity to comfortably slow down and think things over before we actually make a decision that we just start plowing towards in order to achieve a goal. So with this cazimi, we have Mercury now able to communicate, to shout from the rooftops his message. Because we're in a sign like Taurus, and again, this will heavily depend on where Taurus sits in your whole sign house chart, but this typically will have to do with stuff that is related to the physical health, our overall wellness, our comfort, our sensory experiences, and even our resources or our finances. We could be looking at both loud, but more importantly, very clear, like very transparent declarations surrounding health sectors, financial sectors, resource sectors. This, of course, can also have to do with commerce, commercial declarations, or trade declarations and contracts. And then, just 2 days later, we look to the skies again for yet another important conjunction in Taurus, and that is the meeting of our fair lady moon and the sun, a new moon at 26 degrees of Taurus on May 16th. So we have two initiation points in the same sign back to back. And not just the same sign, but literally 2 degrees away from each other in the same decan. Even the new moon is going to carry the face, the mask, the costume of Saturn. And so we look to the moon, and what does the moon mean? Well, the moon represents nostalgia and memories. She represents the physical body, as we've talked about earlier in this video. She represents the environment, the setting where our life story takes place. She represents the home, the roof over our head, or home in the sense of where we feel most comfortable, safe, and secure. And so now we have an initiation point in her exaltation. Let's not forget that. She is very powerful in this new moon configuration here. She loves being in Taurus. There's an emphasis on safety, security, and comfort. Very Taurus-oriented aspects. So putting these two initiation points together, we can craft a more interesting and concise narrative. From that narrative, I've put together a list of 5 different delineations that you can kind of keep in mind as we move through the rest of May. First and foremost, going back to the concept of declarations, of announcements. We have Mercury sitting on the throne of the sun, basically giving forth his decree, giving forth this grand message from a Taurian point of view. Now, whose declaration this is, again, varies on where Taurus sits in your chart. Because remember, if this is in the house of the other, of another person, it could be a declaration from somebody else that just so happens to affect you on the periphery of that person. With the Mercury cazimi, we start with a declaration, and then with the moon, the new moon, we move into a change of setting or a change of environment in order to nurture or match that declaration. In a similar vein, if we're talking about an academic perspective or an academic pursuit. Remember, Mercury, academics, knowledge acquisition. Perhaps now we have a declaration of an academic degree, of a studious degree. And with that new moon, now we need to change the environment, change the setting, whether we move shop to go to a new school, whether we are changing the environment within which we learn, going from a virtual learning space to an in-person learning space, or vice versa. Both of these types of delineations would track with something like this. Next up, we have Mercury announcing something along the lines of commercial support. And I'm thinking back to that Five of Pentacles card, where we have two destitute characters who are in need of support. And because this is Taurus, an earth sign, earth can be materialistic, we're talking about business, commerce, trade. And so what type of support system is either requested or provided to you that then starts to take physical, tangible shape as the new moon moves in next? That new moon can lead to new avenues of expenditures, kind of on a shadowy side, I suppose. Nobody likes to have to spend extra money, but sometimes we need to invest a little more for a bigger return in the end. And of course, on the more positive flip side of that, there's the idea of just resource acquisition, whether it's new resources or an increase of resources you have already been building up. Think of this on a comfort level as well. Even if this is not talking about the home per se, well, where is your place of business? The place of business, is that not the home of commerce? And so is the home of commerce going through any tangible physical changes as a result of Mercury's support? Next up, we have technological advancements. Mercury bringing in some sort of innovation or invention that helps with the resource distribution system that the moon will start to carry forth. And finally, there's this concept that came to me of narrowing down our research or even burning away our research. I had mentioned this earlier, where we may experience a fine-tuning and a narrowing of our options where our studies or academic pursuits are involved. Mercury sitting on the throne of the sun may completely end up burning something away that either no longer serves us or simply just no longer interests us, or we may experience an aha moment of precision, of being able to make a decision, of eliminating superfluous options. With the new moon coming in next, now we're looking at kind of like a hard reset. And I say hard reset because, and hear me out, I took a look back to about November 5th, 2025, when we had that Taurus full moon at 13 degrees of Taurus. So the sun being across the chart at 13 degrees of Scorpio. And I noticed that two of our outer planets, Neptune in retrograde and Uranus, also in retrograde at that time, had either just moved back into the signs they were in previously, I'm looking at you, Neptune, or are about to move back into the previous sign, in Uranus's case. And to me, the environment of the other planets from that full moon to this new moon now, where both Neptune and Uranus have returned to their new spaces, their new homes for the rest of these transits, and they're both direct right now as well. This speaks of something that was not quite ready, something that was not quite blossomed back in November, that now we have a better understanding of it, and it probably just wasn't the right path or option to take in the end. And so now we have this hard reset. And so to double check this, if this is something that resonates with you, I highly recommend going back through your journal, your planner, your diary, your work log. What was going on that first week of November, and how does it reflect and tie into now? Now, with all that said and done, we are about to get to the fun part of the video, or at least the most fun part. All of the parts of the video are fun. I'm entertaining, right? So we're going to get into the horoscopes of what's happening in Taurus over the next couple of weeks. You're going to want to look at your rising sign for this part. That's going to give you the most accurate and most relevant information in whole sign house astrology. And if you don't know your rising sign, but you at least have your birth date, your birth time, and your birthplace, you can hop on over to a free service like astro.com and just quickly plug in your numbers and get your birth chart so that we can continue with today's video. Now, without further ado, let's get started and call out all of my Aries risings out in the comments. You are up first. So obviously Taurus is going to be in your second house. So all of these delineations that pertain to the Mercury cazimi and this new moon in Taurus are going to have to do with the material things in your life, your resources, your finances, and essentially the things that nourish and sustain your existence. Remember, the second house is right next door to the first, and so they are deeply connected. What happens in the second helps us out as the main character of our story. Oftentimes, you can even find the idea of self-worth in the second, because this can also be a place where we build up skills that allow us to exist as that main character. There is a strong sense of tangibility because Taurus is placed here, but there is so much more to the second house than just money and wealth. There is a lot more required to living a holistic and nourished life. For Taurus rising, this is very obviously happening in your first house. So these two initiation points, Mercury's cazimi and the new moon, are all about you, yourself, and you. This is your character. This is your physical body, your sense of self and self-identity, who you are as the main character in this story you call life. So you can expect some form of newness, novelty, or initiation insofar as your body and your character. This is also a space of how you present to other people as well, your personality, your quirks. Next in line, we have Gemini rising, which places Taurus in your 12th house. And so that means you are going to be experiencing Mercury's cazimi and the new moon in a space of liminality, subconscious, secrets, and the stuff beyond our control. The 12th house is the joy of Saturn. And so this is a space where we may experience self-sabotage, a loss of control, hidden misfortune, and blind spots in our lives. Planets that are in the 12th are trying to reach the first, but primary motion is pulling them away from the driver's seat. You may also find institutions like hospitals and mental health clinics, that type of thing in the 12th. So initiation points may be happening for Gemini risings insofar as your sense of self-control and the locus of control beyond your own, or health institutions, your mental health, your subconscious experiences. Next up, we have all my Cancer risings in the comments. You have Taurus in the 11th, and so your two initiation points, your Mercury cazimi and your new moon, are going to be happening in a space of alliances and benefactors. The 11th house heavily supports the 10th. Here we often find people, places, and things that give us the visibility and the motivation and the resources in order to excel in the 10th, our career house. We may also find our own hopes and aspirations here as well. The 11th is trying to rise up to the 10th. Now, the thing with the 11th is oftentimes, as a shadow side, we can get stuck and caught up in those hopes and dreams. Stuck in the planning phase, as all of my planning pals in the comments like to call it. We can overplan, we can overthink, and end up going nowhere, essentially. So these initiation points, are we changing our hopes and goals? Are we redefining them? Are we narrowing the list down so that we actually have a tangible action plan to start working towards? Is there something coming into visibility, that Mercury cazimi especially, that is going to help boost our career or our presence in the public eye in the 10th? All right, all my Leo risings, you're up next, and you've got these two initiation points happening in a fantastic place in the chart, the 10th, the career, or just your public self, the most visible part of yourself. So we have two initiation points that have to do with academics and commerce, and then the home, the environment, safety, and security, all happening in the 10th house. So remember what I said earlier in this video. This could actually be an initiation point and changes to the setting of where you work, how you work. What are the responsibilities of your current job, and are those going to be changing in any way, shape, or form? Is there going to be new technologies, new forms of communication that you may need to adapt in order to continue moving forward in your career? Because we have the concept of visibility when we conjoin the sun, you might be very visible, extra visible, top of your class, your department, wherever this public space is for you as we navigate these transits. Moving right along, we've got Virgo rising. Virgo rising, you are going to have this earthy sign over in your 9th house of religion, spirituality, beliefs, authenticity. Essentially, the 9th is a place of stuff that holds reality together for you, whatever your reality may be. And so we have Mercury, often associated with astrology. He is the planet that represents this beautiful celestial language, raised on high, put on a pedestal for a brief moment in order to initiate something. So what messages from any sort of spiritual groups or religious groups may you receive at this time that will help any sort of newness or novelty in the comfort, safety, security, home, or your own physical body? Your beliefs may be going through a change at this time. Now, when I say reality, we may also find the higher sciences, the STEM topics here in the 9th as well. So if that is something that resonates more with you than spirituality or religion, those two initiation points may have to do with those academic educational pursuits, especially since Mercury is involved here. Moving forward in the wheel, we have Libra risings, which places Taurus in your 8th house. This is another space that is considered more challenging or difficult because it does not form a traditional aspect to the 1st. In the 8th, with these initiation points of Mercury and the Moon, Libra rising, you may find yourself dealing with initiation points in very deeply rooted karmic interactions and connections. The 8th house is often labeled death and taxes because death is a point of transition. Taxation is giving up our resources in a form of commitment to another, to a higher power, to the other. You can also find literally the other's resources in the 8th. So the resources of the spouse, the partner, your close friends, your business partners. So on the topic of those resources, we again have a sign all about resources and Mercury, the planet of commerce and trade. What types of karmic commitments with long-term consequences might you be encountering as we go through these transits? And how is that going to affect the home where you have your roots, your sense of safety, stability, and security? Remember that this is a moksha house. The goal here is to achieve liberation from attachments. It's a space of detaching, and this is where we detach from our sense of materialism. Next up, we have Scorpio rising with Taurus over in the 7th, another house of the other. So similar to Libra rising, you might actually be bearing witness to somebody else's initiation points, whether this be a spouse, a partner, a business partner, or a very close friend. The 7th is also a space of culmination and of consummation. It is the setting point of the sun in the chart. So this is the stuff that we do after we've thrown down the work clothes and we're ready to either lay our heads down for sleep or go out on a weekend. This is a place of kama, of bliss. We seek joy and that sensual, tactile, embodied, feel-good vibe in this space. So we have the initiation point of Mercury being reborn, our ability to communicate, to connect through body language is being highlighted here as we move into a new moon, which exalted in this space, how might we be looking at our relationships and how they can change, evolve, and become more novel and exciting? Next up, we have Sagittarius rising. All my siblings, all my fellow Sagittarians, sound off in the comments. This is all about us this next segment. And we are experiencing these initiation points in our 6th houses, which is considered another difficult space. This space, unlike the 8th, is all about self-sacrifice. This is the day-to-day drudgery that we don't necessarily enjoy, but we understand from a mature perspective that it needs to be done. So here is a space where you would find subordinates, you would find small animals or pets, things below us, essentially. Or you would also find places that require discipline, that require sacrifice in order to make something else happen. Here, planets are trying to reach that Kama house of the 7th, this place of rest, of bliss, of fun, of sex, of pleasure, and that clockwise motion of the chart is pulling them away. We can never reach a point of rest. We have to keep marching. Mercury, burning off all of this karma, is now maybe giving us new contracts, new avenues of commerce, new ways to communicate that we are going to have to commit to in order to integrate into our systems. And then moving into a new moon, now how do we feel in our body? Literally, physically. The 6th house often can showcase representations of the physical health. And so are there any technologies or innovative discoveries that Mercury is bringing forth that will actually pertain to our physical health and our bodies? Do we need to adapt a physical health regimen? Do we need to start one from scratch? These are all questions that are worth considering during these transits. Next up, we got the Capricorn risings in the comments. You got this in the fun house, the 5th house, the joy of Venus. So with Taurus in the 5th, we are looking at pure and utter creative self-expression. And we have a very talkative, very expressive planet chilling out here, Mercury and his cazimi. So, are there any sort of analog aesthetics that have appealed to you that you may be exploring at this time? And how is that going to be brought forth tangibly into the physical realm when we have the new moon 2 days later? This may also be a re-evaluation of what brings you comfort, what makes you happy, what brings you joy. Often you'll find children represented in the 5th as well. And so if children resonate with you, whether you'd like to start a family someday, or children are very important and prominent in your day-to-day life, how are there going to be novel and new ideas to explore in the realm of children? Is there new technology coming through? Is there a new system of resource distribution that you may be a part of that will support the children in and around your life? Next up, we've got Aquarius rising, which places Taurus in the 4th house of the actual home. But not just the home, our ancestry, where we come from. It's the most subterranean and secretive inner world of our chart. This can be our past, but it can also be our family. Typically the immediate family, but this can also be lineage, our roots. And so Mercury here in cazimi, this really makes me think of digging up historical records or documentation of some kind and having conversations about your lineage and where you've come from. It's an initiation point as well, so this is new and novel ideas that are being introduced in the home, in the family space. And when we move over to the new moon, the new moon is the mother, the grandmother, the matriarch of the family. So is there anything that has to do with the matriarchs in your family or your home, whether it's you or another family member, that may be highlighted during these next few transits? And again, as an initiation point, this could just be a reevaluation and a refurbishing of the space where we are supposed to be able to be most comfortable, our home, the roof over our head. Last but certainly not least, we've got Pisces rising, which places Taurus over in your 3rd house. A very interesting house indeed, and also the joy of the moon. So here in the 3rd, we experience community, the neighborhood, The third is closely related to the fourth. It's a reflection of the fourth. And what is the reflection of the home and family but our extended family? The neighbors, our neighborhood, the places of familiarity that we go to on a regular basis. So now we're seeing Mercury, the planet of travel, as well, something I did forget to mention at the start of the video. We might see new concepts, ideas, sparks of information, declarations around travel and those familiar spaces. There might be a changing of how we get to those spaces. Because a cazimi implies the burning off of something, the release of something no longer serving us, this could quite literally be a change in our everyday drive, our everyday travel plans, or just our community in general. And as we move into the new moon, what new places, paths, and spaces are taking root? What does comfort, security, and stability look like on the other side of these changes with regards to the community? Let's not forget that the third house is also communication and technology overall. So Mercury is really working overtime in this house. There is a huge emphasis for Pisces risings on how you communicate. And because of those limitations I mentioned, this might be a big emphasis on the body language, the facial expressions, how things make us feel, and what our nervous system is trying to tell us, especially as we move into the new moon, the planet of embodiment. And there you have it, folks, a nice handy dandy but brief list of delineations to help you navigate these next couple of weeks in May. I sincerely hope you were able to glean some insight and wisdom from this video, and I hope that you feel more prepared for what's to come as well. As always, I appreciate all of your support on this channel, and if you want to continue supporting the channel, it would help tremendously if you could go ahead and like, share, and if you so choose, subscribe if any of my content resonates with you, especially if you've been enjoying the learning experience thus far. I'm very excited to see you all in the next video, and in the meantime, if you want to learn more about your birth chart and what it has to say about you and your life story, then by all means, I invite you to join me over on Instagram. The link to my profile is down below in the description, where you can book a one-on-one virtual consultation with yours truly. I offer birth chart readings and a variety of tarot card readings, and I would love to sit down one-on-one with you to discuss the inner machinations of your birth chart and decipher what the planets have to say about you and your life story moving forward. As always, I hope you have a fantastic day, an even more fantastic week, and don't forget to take care of yourselves and each other, especially in times like these. Bye-bye.